Real brief. Watching dailies here for the next one. The title of the next episode is incorrect. The premise of the episode, we have to change that. Similar to how, on they can't seem to spell in pathological probabilities over there, fallacies on lower decks. Similar to that, we have an episode called The Arbiter, or The Arbiter of Key-Draconis. It should be called The Arbiter of Terra, because Key-Draconis does not enter into the story at all. Jeremy Astor appears once, and it's probably not him. Roshenko doesn't appear at all, so he's on DS9 or somewhere else. Yeah, that's funny and different. So this episode will be, coming up will be different. So it's just to know that it should be called The Arbiter of Key-Draconis, or The Arbiter. Just call it The Arbiter. But Key-Draconis probably sounds more mysterious. But it should be Terra, because it's the Kepteran planet. It's the other Terra. So just note that. Change the title on it. It's not in the episode anywhere. It's called The Arbiter in the episode. It's the Voyager episode. It's the one where Tuvok arbitrates a dispute between two warring factions, the Missy and Latori back in the original story, and the Breeders were the third group. The Orville did something very similar to this. But yes, there's probably a coincidence, or the Orville's on the same wavelength. But yeah, very similar. Also, the Space Vanguard ESV also did that. This is for the next one. We're going through all the bridge scenes. We're going to do all the bridge scenes. And this week, get all the bridge scenes done for the whole thing. And then go back and do the individual episodes. It's easier to film on the bridge. Easiest to film on the bridge because it's the set 3 walls. You just shift the wall around, go on the bridge, film there, go next, go on the other thing, film there, go next. It's easiest to do it that way, to just structure it so like you do with the Robotech 1, where the Robotech 1 needed different sets and planets they go to, and this one will too, but it's easier to just do all the bridge scenes. It wasn't completely a chore to do all the bridge shots with the DS9 crew homage. Also, let it be noted that Nog is not in the episode, but we don't really mention what happened to him. I'm assuming he's still around because he gets a ship named after him later. He just wasn't in the episode because Joan Tall is clearly captain now and not the first officer anymore. And his first officer is Cedo. Also, it was changed. That was in the previous one, DS9 one. The Fearful Symmetry. Also, it's not clear whether, in fact, when the contest ended, any fans stopped. Were allowed to continue to write for Star Trek. Probably not. Most of the people that have written for Star Trek since were all famous or something. One of the other notes was an agent. Didn't have an agent. I still don't. But yeah, that wasn't one of the notes in the notes. That was just a guess later on. Yeah, you're not in the know. You're not. And at least as far back as 2016, and it still applies when they were doing new Star Trek, started to put Discovery together. That still no fan submissions at all. We want to do our own stuff. So Paramount said that no fan submissions. Don't submit anything. We'll throw it away. We won't send it back. We'll throw it away. So they would not have accepted Mike Milt's script back for Star Trek Beyond at all. They would have said, no, we won't want your story. We're not even going to talk to you. Here's your, do whatever. But yeah, that's basically. If I lower the camera down onto Tuvok, if it sits in the bridge, it would almost fit. I wonder if it'll slide over though, and land on him. Probably land on him. Yeah, so I believe I pretty much filmed most of the teaser of the Arbiter of Terra, not Key-Draconis, the Arbiter of Terra, And yeah, it's the Starship. It may look like Space Vanguard's Starcrackers Space Vanguard's episode because it is. It became one as well. So doing the lines are like, well, yeah, that was a book series though. I don't think we got around to filming that then, but it's interesting doing these lines that have been quoted before. Also, some elements of this did kind of the DNA of Voyager going on from season 2. Kind of did include some of this stuff, so they did read it, and it's in their back of their minds whenever Tuvok went to a planet, like planet of the aged children, and the planet of those the weird alternate guys, the planet where they had that radiation on the planet and stuff like that, and yeah, it's in the DNA of Voyager. Yeah, and they looked at it clearly, not as blatantly as the ship, when quoting lines from it, but they did have some similar. So yeah, the DNA of Voyager, and of course Plotter. Yes, but yeah, here we have yeah, a Voyager-esque story, but with the Chimera A, and we have Ambassador Tuvok, who would have just turned 140. He'd be very, very old. That's because Vulcans have a weird aging process. They're like the reverse of those Klingons that age really fast. Apparently, the Vulcans don't age hardly at all. And well, they had this episode called Flashback, the 30th anniversary of Voyager, and they were like, let's have Tuvok be on Sulu's ship so we can use the set that's still there from Star Trek 6. There's a set. We're going to use it again. And put George Takei and Grace Lee Whitney in there and have them be on the bridge. And have Tuvok be young Tuvok, which doesn't really make sense. That like 78 years earlier he was somehow on the bridge of the other ship, but I guess and he was 28 and then he just dropped out and then raised a family and came back. But it's like Tuvok as of the Picard show would be 137 and now it's 3 years later. So also I referenced that he was captured by the Changelings. I didn't say what happened to him. He was captured by the Changelings and thrown in a closet. No. There's also a nod to, of course, Mike and Rich from the last season are back. Last season of our show, Mike Matthews and Rich Everson, who are anagram archetypes for Mike Stalaska and Rich Evans. We've already had the appearance of Jay Birdman / Jay Bonham, and now we have the other two show up in this episode because he's Neelix, because Rich is Neelix, so he would show up, and Mike would show up as Kess, which is hilarious. Mike is Kess, which is funny. Ew. Yeah. So yeah, it's a comedy. Sure, why not? Also, I decided to shoot the scene where they're in the alien ship and sort of on the alien planet. It's not described very well in the story. So I figured, why don't just put them inside the shuttlecraft and just make it look like an alien ship? It does on the inside, so yeah, it's the shuttlecraft. They did that on Star Trek a lot anyway. They would redress a set several times. I remember in the first couple seasons of Voyager, mainly the first season, they had this corridor with these flashing bulb lights in the background because it was part of a set from DS9 they weren't using. So they would be like, oh, we're going to use the beam down into the alien corridor set. And it was the same background over and over again for different alien corridors. They didn't bother changing the lights. They looked the same. It's kind of like that city street down in the Privet Drive city street from Harry Potter that they've redressed and rejiggered for several English movies at Pinewood Studios over the years. The Paddington Bear, the Christopher Robin movie, the Mary Poppins remake, all use the same set. It's clearly the same street, everything. They just changed it a little bit up, put some different cars on it. It was clearly Privet Drive from Harry Potter, which is funny. So yeah, why not use the shuttle since we have it? And it doesn't appear too much, but it's expensive, so let's use the shuttle. Yeah, and it does look way cool to have that in there. Yeah, it's interesting how the '90s kind of the story isn't prophetic necessarily or predicting the future necessarily. However, it kind of did just because like okay, we filmed this weird society on this planet where they've become stratified by their genetics, basically, their racial diversity and genetics. It's kind of one of those episodes of Star Trek, which they did explore in Strange New Worlds recently with that Court episode. Pretty similar. Yeah, very similar. Um, but yeah, so they're on the same wavelength as that. Also, the Kelpians in Star Trek Discovery also have a similar thing with their predator species. They're a prey species and the predator species, which means they wouldn't have evolved, but fine. They wouldn't have evolved space travel. They would have just been a prey species, like a deer or something. So yeah, it is interesting. This story, it addresses. Originally it was the breeders, the Latori, and the Numissi, and there were like three groups of aliens on the planet, similar to how the Orville handled those Mochlins and the robot, the Kelvins and the other ones. Similar to that, similar to the planet where with the internet downvote upvote people, and similar to that, as a sort of a Cillian kind of thing. Star Trek, but of course the Orville was kind of like Star Trek anyway. It was kind of like a Star Trek light sort of thing. Yeah, so they were doing stuff that was very similar to ours before ours was on the air yet. Before 2019, they were like doing our stuff. So yeah, very similar. And they know us. They know of us. They don't know us personally. They know of us. So, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, they know of the channel. Even though the channel doesn't have a lot of views, it has a lot of videos, so people have seen it. That's what it is. Yeah, there's a lot of videos of the Brown Video Productions thing. There's a lot of videos of the Reviews channel. There's a lot of videos of the Transformers fan film and Star Trek Chimera fan films on the other channel. And it is a small world because there was another guy, the horror geek, Mike Bracken, apparently is from around here. And I happened to mention in the comments on his site yesterday that you should do the Nightmare on Blood and the Milpitas Monster and that kind of thing. And he goes and he commented back and he said, "Yeah, I've heard of those. Yeah, yeah, I worked at the comic shop in Milpitas." I was like, "Really?" So I commented on the comments like, "Which one? Space Cat?" So yeah, Space Cat. So, you really did look familiar. Yeah, you were at Space Cat. I probably bought comics from you. But yeah, that's awesome. So yeah. Space Cat's not there anymore. The pandemic took it out. They just closed. They closed during that pandemic. Anyways, so yeah, we were more Time Tunnel and Capital and stuff. Yeah, our characters, and that toy show that's coming up. So or more Time Tunnel. But still, it's still the collectibles. So we have we have a story that's about race relations, basically. It was originally called Differences. It was an next-gen script. It was rewritten for Voyager. Now it's been rewritten for Chimera. Yeah, years later, and it works on multiple levels as a Star Trek story. It's the very thing people are discussing now on about Star Trek. Why don't they do this or that to express a modern society, stuff like that. I think the reason they don't is because they don't as much is because they can't really do that without jumping off on a tangent and doing a rant about current politics. And they don't want to do that because that will make the story dated. If you had an episode where they beamed down to a planet and there was a hapless, mentally deranged president guy running around going, "I don't want to get sued and arrested for doing crimes I did." Yeah, that would get old real fast and no one would want to see that. Or if there's another one that's just mentally incompetent that isn't doing much, if he's not ballsy enough, that too, it's like, yeah, nobody wants to see that. That's why. It would be like, well, the Orville did the thing about the upvote, downvote thing. They did an internet episode, so the internet lady came back and she was evil in the third season. So yeah, she shouldn't have been evil though. She should have just been misguided. Yeah, they changed that. But yeah, so the idea here is that there's a society, a have and have not society going on, and in this story, and this is how you would do that in a modern Star Trek. Actually, you'd have these two societies working together. It'd be revealed that the higher ups are sneaky, conniving, of course. Maybe some of the lower downs are sneaking, conniving with them, which was the idea of the story. Some of them are actually trying to get up on the ladder, so they're acting with the bad guys. Kind of like that weapons dealer at Transformers episode with two warring factions, Cold War factions, fighting each other with weapons increasingly powerful. And not realizing the benefactors are the Quintessons who were behind the whole thing. It'd be like if the Ferengi were behind, messing with some planet. I think they didn't really do that on Star Trek so much. I think once they did that, maybe twice. But yeah, and yeah, there was a little rant here about racial. It's part of the story. Yeah, they have to figure out what's going on. Who the Cinder's character is. Cinder's character is modeled after a TMS or JSU person, indirectly. She's a Dax figure in the story. And we're not going to say who it actually is, because she's an amalgam of 2 or 3 different people. She's also Cinder's sister and wife from the other person. So it's not connected. And an ex-girlfriend of another guy's. She's all kind of stuck together. She's 3 different people. She's real confused. Yeah, so there was a couple of sites also going on about alt-right people were complaining about there was a character on lower decks who was wearing a sort of a pseudo hijab, a Muslim headdress, basically. And they were complaining about that. Of course, they hadn't seen the episode. They just saw the clips because they're alt-right and they don't actually watch TV. She didn't say or do anything. She's just in the background. And they're racist. And the people, Steve Shives did the thing and Jesse Gender did the thing. And the comment on there was, what would Roddenberry do and all that stuff. And did all these goofy things. Well, back in the animated, so it's a little bit related to this because it's race relations. It is related to this. It is critical race theory, kind of. Yeah, that's only taught in colleges, incidentally. Only in the university level, not in the grade level, not in high school, not in junior high, not in elementary. It's only taught in grad school, but they make it sound like it's taught everywhere because they don't know what they're talking about. You can take ethnic studies in college, in junior college, I did. But yeah, yeah. Yeah, so one thing you learn in college is you learn that certain phrases and words that they use don't really mean that. When they wrote the animated series episode Yesteryear, they used jihad. And when they wrote some other American movies, they wrote jihad as a holy war. And apparently after the 9/11 terrorist attack, the extremists, they used jihad as, holy war, holy war. It doesn't mean that. If you go back to their holy book, their Quran thing, I'm a Christian, I read the Bible. But I've actually read some of the other one too. Where does this word come from? I want to see where this word came from. So it doesn't mean that. It means inner struggle with your inner demons. It does not mean outer struggle with other people. So if the extremists are saying, no, it means outer struggle with other people, they're wrong. It doesn't mean that. And that goes back to what's in the story. The 2 extremist groups on this planet are fighting an ideology on this planet that they don't understand, that has become corrupted on either side in ideology. It's kind of like that. It's similar to that. I don't think it's mentioned in here that necessarily in the story, but it's interesting that it's similar. And so what would Roddenberry have thought of Deep Space Nine? He died before Deep Space Nine started. He had notes on it, but he didn't really read them. I think he would have liked the idea of space Nazi Cardassians fighting Palestinian Israeli Jews on the planet. I think he would have liked that. He would have been all for that. But he wouldn't have liked the space war with the Dominion. He wouldn't have liked the other stuff like that. He wouldn't have liked the Xindi war on Star Trek following a terrorist thing. That to put the Xindi and the Suliban and all that goofy. They made it sound goofy. Time travel and stuff. They should have just said 3rd season of Enterprise. That's Enterprise later. 2001, 2002. They should have just said the Romulan War. done the Romulan War. That's what they started to do with Season 4. They should have done it in Season 3 and ignored the Zindi stuff and this whole Suliban thing. It doesn't make sense, because you can't take modern, like I was saying, you can't take modern at the time political situations and make them a Star Trek. That's not what Roddenberry was doing with the original show. He would make characters that were allegories for those. They would have, like, weapons trading on the planet. Kirk would go down there to stop the Klingons from selling weapons to the Indians. It's Vietnam, but it's not really. They're not saying, this is Vietnam planet. However, Roddenberry did help write an episode called The Omega Glory, in which it literally was Vietnam. And Earth and all alternate Earth, where it was the Yangs and the Combs, really bad. This episode is kind of a sequel to that, because these characters are kind of acting like they're descendants of them. It's interesting, there are some TMS people from Cillian space that have infiltrated the planet, and yeah, that's going to become relevant, because they are the ones playing both sides. So, evil cult people. It's a cult. Interestingly, it's a cult, but that we didn't realize that's what I was writing about. An extremist cult. In the 90s, when I wrote the story, I wasn't thinking of the 9/11 stuff, because it's the 90s, and the story that it's based on. So I was probably thinking of the Irish revolts, which I also mentioned at the Jesse Dinder comment. It wasn't always the other guys, the alt-right, going after people that aren't white. There were white people fighting other white people. In the 80s, 70s and 80s, 60s through the 80s, there was the Irish revolts. There's white guys. There's pasty white guys with red hair fighting each other because some of them were Protestant, some of them were Catholic. Just fighting each other. We're going to fight each other. They had a holy war going. It was just like, what? Why? And then Next Generation mentioned an Irish Reformation of 2024. But apparently they actually reformed in, I think, during Next Generation. They actually reformed around 1990 or so. After the Russian thing fell apart, they reformed. They decided, no, we're not going to do that anymore. So we did an entirety day of filming. We knocked out all of the bridge scenes for the Arbiter of Terra. I say Keytruhe, the Arbiter of Terra. Rambled on about other stuff. I suppose when you do the making of for each episode, they'll have their own little making of vignette thing, like we did with the Robotech Meets the Transformers and the other shows. I don't think any of these will have previews beforehand. They will have, your teaser and then the credits roll and that kind of thing. But they don't need previews because it airs on the channel. But yeah, we did that. We also did some of the Lelantos scene here. In case you're wondering who Lelantos is, the Pathfinder saga. This is an actual realized action figure of Lelantos of the Pathfinder saga. Sort of an alternate version of the Starcrackers, the Space Vanguards. It was Mark's cards, originally playing the Starcrackers Captain Clark. Lucky Clerk kind of character. So here Lucky Clerk is Picard. And that's Lelantos. He's not married to Lelantos, though that would be weird. He's married to Mr. Picard in the story. Lelantos is sort of an alternate Picard, a Borgified Cillian Picard. It's also suggested that, we did change it back. We're going to change it, and then we change it back. Him being loquacious or lascivious of Borg. And in the alternate universe, far-outian version, Picard LaForge novel version of Picard. But that was so meta and random, we're going to make reference to that. Making him Lelantos made more sense. He was in it. And also, that was not in the original story. In the original story, the bad guy was Bea and Truva and Flotter. The guy was Flotter. We changed it. It was Flotter. And he was, he wasn't a former Starship captain. We threw that in there for this one to make it a little more comedic. It's kind of a drama episode, really. Make it more comedic. So more of a comedy. And it's fine to have a few drama episodes in there. It's fine. Perfectly fine. And I would suspect that this particular story would, when completed, would air around Halloween. So kind of cool. But yeah, so we'll see. Maybe not. And we'll see. So we have, Yeah, well, the Lalantos there, and yeah, he's supposed to be Picard. He's playing Picard and Lalantos, the teacher. Well, Sam Clark, yeah, Sam Clark is the teacher as well. Clark, the teacher. So this is another guy. This is an alternate universe version, sort of mirror, but not quite. Sort of an Abrams version of Picard, where he's darker, kind of like the one in the Picard show, actually. But he's not supposed to be. He's yeah, he looks like Picard. I think I said he looks like Picard. That's okay. They keep interchanging Lucky Clerk with Picard in the story. It's clearly who it is. It's funny if he references it, because then that way he's saying he watches Star Trek, which is funny. The silly Trek people watch Star Trek and they're aware of it. Yeah. Mike and Rich and Jay on the bridge there in the story. Originally just Mike and Rich, and they decided, why don't put all three of them there? Even though they're not supposed to be, they're there just because it's funny. And actually, the proto matter thing was, of course, the Mike's idea, which would terraform. Well, the best one. Actually, that makes no sense at all. A antimatter bomb going off, and then them launching a terraform missile basically at it would probably just annihilate the matter from the antimatter as well and just not do anything. But it's Star Trek, and it is silly. The silly version of Star Trek. So we'll forgive them their scientific BS there. It really wouldn't work. Yeah, so anyway, we had to use the power supply at the last minute. And yeah, I rambled on about the politics of the story, but it was actually relevant to the story if what they were doing was basically that old Star Trekkers episodes, This Age is Set, which became differences, which became judgments on that show, which became the Arbiter in the show, which became judgments again on the other one. It's more of a take on the Irish Catholic revolts than the Protestant revolts of the Ireland than it is necessarily a religious war on the planet. It's more ideology of angry people, angry mobs on planets going after each other. And the idea is that there's a weapons dealer guy who's behind the whole thing, and it's this other guy, and he's turned and he's decided that he's playing both sides. So he decides to start a interstellar space war, not realizing that coincidentally the Starfleet ship would show up. And by making him, in this story version, a ex-Starfleet captain, it then makes it a little more interesting, that makes it a little more TOS, in that, oh, this other Starfleet captain, he went rogue and he did stuff wasn't supposed to. We're not sure why he was doing that stuff, but yeah, and if it is indeed a colony of the Omega Glory people from Omega, the Capterans, if they are a colony similar to the other colonies, similar to the Proto-Earths, similar to the Roman one and the other one, and the Miri planet, which is also an Earth duplicate. Yeah, if they're similar to that, they're probably all colonies. Yeah, you wonder, like in the original Star Trek Prime Directive thing, which they address more in Next Generation, in Deep Space Nine, and some of the other shows. If it's a planet that's a parallel Earth, does a Prime Directive even apply to a Cillian planet where it's a parallel Earth? It probably technically doesn't, because it's an Earth colony, or it's an Earth analog. So it's, yeah, and they have warp, so they have ships. We're not sure what this fleet even looked like in the story. Just an alien fleet shows up. So yeah, visually, they're behind the scenes. Briefly, there was a thought that we could have the fleet captain show up, and it could be Tal from the other story. But then we thought, well, no, the fleet captain didn't have any lines, so I wanted to shoot the story as is. It is a little long, the story was, for Voyager. But, yeah, I mean, the notes that said of this one and the Star Trek one that were not part of that were not part of necessarily the rejection letter, but the note that's long since disappeared, that said he had a good grasp of the characters. Tuvok is done really well in this. I really, really nailed Tuvok. Well, that sounds dirty, but but no, the character in the story really is Tuvok. The captain, as Ezri Dax, is really kind of Janeway in the story. Everyone else is kind of doing their thing. Plus, we have the cadets getting to do the helm and the navigation, the ops station, the whole time, which is neat. During a tense situation on the ship, we also meet since this character, it's Jay and Mike and Rich here. Here he is over here. Okay. Here we have here we have the trio right here. We got this guy, Rich and Mike and Jay on the bridge. So Red Letter Media, here's your action. All three of you. They're the space cops. They're cops from the future. The future of space. So they're space cops from the future of space. The character of Jay Bonham has been growing his hair long so they could play the character Riker. Yeah, his hair and beard. And we have Mike and Rich playing these two. And they have commented on their show about one obscure guy's fan film that spoofed Star Trek Galaxy and made Mike into Lore and Rich into Neelix, only to have Jay later comment, "Why am I not in that?" Well, now Jay, you are in that. Not really. It's somebody playing you. It's playing you. But all three of you were in this episode, referencing Star Trek directly. Like, oh, are we in Star Trek? This is awesome. It was like, can you figure Star Trek fans would probably do something like that if they were offered the chance to get on the bridge? They would go gaga over the fact that we're on the bridge. Wow, can I press the buttons? Wow. But there's no other Star Trek fan that's that excited about being on the bridge of a rebuilt Enterprise than Will Wheaton. I don't know if they took down the thing, but there was this Will Wheaton thing, his special, where he got to go on the bridge of the rebuilt Enterprise D from Star Trek Picard Season 3, and he was just giddy. He was walking around with Mike Okuda. They were looking at everything, looking at the details and things that are on the front and the back. They completely rebuilt it, but they did use some of the bridge set left over from the Trek experience, and they had they completely rebuilt it. They only used the Trek experience stuff as a guide to rebuild it. So some of that was pictured on the walls and stuff, and because they tore down the 2008 one, but they removed and put away the 2005 one before that when they put in the board experience. So that one was still there, and they were able to use that set. And that's the one that has the Kal Kat mark on the side, and it still does. They put the Kal Kat mark in the new one, thinking it was part of some set guys. And they showed when they did the whole thing. There's the claw mark. There's the sticker. Didn't realize that was actually a fan that put that there during the experience. It wasn't from the show. It was from the experience. But yes, we gotta have that sticker there. It's important. Yes. But anyway, so yeah, we're done with the bridge scenes for tonight. Of this, or do the other bridge scenes are much shorter. We had 2 bottle shows here that had mostly bridge scenes. Both of the bottle shows. So we had to do the bottle show. Also, the other stuff about the. Yeah, I hope the. When we air the making of footage, like the Homeland Security doesn't have a fit over the story being about bad guys and stuff and talking about terrorists, but we're talking about them as being bad guys. It's all good, so it shouldn't be a problem. Yeah, I'm not saying that all of them are. I'm saying the bad guys are bad guys, right? Why can't we make a show where they talk about that? What's good, what's bad, things to do. Yeah. So on the planet in the story, they were causing. So they had a mob rule society. They had sort of a council and a president, very similar to a fascist society, actually, on the planet, I would say. Alt-right, definitely. Indefinitely, actually. They were spoofing it, but they were spoofing this in 1995. The story was written 1996. Still retains that. The idea that the hapless commander guy, former, like, popular guy, is grabbed, at the end of the story. Because the story isn't done yet. We're not going to give away the ending or anything, but just the bridge scenes that we did here, he's grabbed at the end. And yeah, and it's not a race thing and it's not a religion thing because clearly Lelanto's character sounds Latin. Lelantos, fox hunter, Latin fox hunter. That's kind of interesting, fox hunter. Lelantos, and it looks like Ross. Well, Ross sounds like it was really Rossman in the story. It was also at one point Flotter. He was Flotter, yeah, Bea and Flotter. That was it. They added him to Voyager, not realizing that was my paper town. You're gonna use Flotter. I'm gonna know you read my script. They used the Flotter. You made him blue. That's interesting, different. The characters were supposed to be blue on the planet, actually. Blue green. Sort of. A different guy, though. They might say, no, it's a different guy. It's a different Flotter. It could be, but it's not. The planet is the Flotter endocrine system. But that's Flodi. That's different. So yeah, and this one we changed the name back to. Changed the name completely. Ross. Ross in this story is a LaForge figure. It's been painted up to look like he's a blue San Jose State kind of markings one. And the Picard is sort of a evergreen markings one. A slightly yellow-green evergreen markings one. So yeah. But it's I'm not sure why Mike and Rich and Jay are there, other than to say Mike and Rich and Jay are on the show. Also, there was I'll also mention something else from the other thing. Briefly, there were some comments in the Steve Shives review of the girl wearing the hijab in the thing. Somebody was commenting on why is there a wheelchair guy on Discovery. It's ridiculous. Why would anybody be in a wheelchair in Star Trek's distant future of the 31st century? And to which I commented two things about that, because I've known of people that were in wheelchairs, they had MS and things like that from years ago. At San Jose State, there were some people that had cerebral palsy and MS and other things, and it turns out that that guy on the show that was on Discovery was a Star Trek fan, and he was married to one of the other actors, and he wanted to be on Star Trek Discovery before he died. So he's like, I want to be on Star Trek Discovery. And they're like, well, okay. He's a good actor, so he's an actor. He has ALS. He has Lou Gehrig's disease. Unfortunate that Lou Gehrig is called. His name is Mitchell something. Ryan Mitchell, something like that. I think that's Kevin. It's Kevin Mitchell? It's Kevin Mitchell. He's not the baseball player. He just has a similar name. Kenneth Mitchell, I think is his name. Kenneth Mitchell. And he's not a baseball player, but he's a famous actor in Hollywood that has the ALS. And he's a Star Trek fan. So the Discovery people said, well, all right, we'll make you a character, put you on the show. That'd be awesome. So he gets to go on the show. Same thing Stephen Hawking did the same thing. Famous physicist who was in a wheelchair because he had MS. That made him all. Yeah, he had something similar to ALS. Yeah. All of his muscles are turning to jelly and he's falling apart. Yeah. I mean, he eventually passed away, but not before he invented a lot of physics stuff and discovered things about black holes and event horizons and stuff. He got to be on Star Trek as well because he was a Star Trek fan. So yeah, it wasn't that they're just all, let's throw the wheelchair guy there. And also, I figured in the comments that also to that effect, why couldn't that be the case in that future? In that timeline, they said that there was the burn happened, and that Starfleet got completely strapped and messed up. So it's possible that medical science went backward a little bit on that show in terms of that kind of thing. And perhaps they hadn't heard of that disease in centuries, and they didn't know how to cure it. So there you go. There you go. It came back. It mutated. In a similar way to how the anti-vaxxer a-hole people brought back measles and mumps and stuff because they refused to vaccinate their kids. And they got measles and mumps. It had been eradicated for 30 years or more, and they brought it back. Because it's not going anywhere, it's just that they eradicated it. So yeah, that could totally happen in that future, in that timeline. Making of the 6th, October, Friday, and we're going to do a scene from the Arbiter of Terra, and yeah, the meeting room scene. So yeah, let's just start doing it. Okay, making of, a bit more making of. We deleted a minor scene where Cam and Kestra, but they were actually not Tam and Kestra in the original story. They were Harry, Kim, and Paris meet with Carmen Evers on the bridge, and on the mess hall, and they discuss the situation. It's a slice of life thing, but the episode is long, so I think we might. I cut it out. The Mike and Rich scene right afterward. It's fine. It's the same information. They're unsure about what's going on. It makes more sense that since Mike and Rich are the guest stars of the story, that they get a scene, but not the other two with the flirting. That doesn't really do anything. I know it's taking out a Kestra scene, but it kind of, yeah, doesn't need to be in there. So yeah. Okay, that was the Arbiter of Terra. Just the briefing room scenes. And yeah, they're the briefing room scenes. Sick Bay has a few scenes too. There's other ships and quarters. The script came out to a little over 52 minutes. As a script, 52 pages. It would have been a little long. I can also see why the Voyager team kept it and wanted to look at it again and maybe do a rewrite. And years ago they could have, contacted us and said, okay, we like your story. We want you to rewrite it and make it about 45 minutes, not an hour. Take out 5 minutes, send us back that version, and we'll be good. And they could have done that. And they would have been like, okay, yeah, just cut out the extraneous, visits by Harry Kim, basically. He doesn't need to be there going to see his friend. Doesn't need to be in the story. I know it's a nice little slice of life character moment, but no, the story is the arbitration of the two warring factions on the planet. And it's funny looking back on it. Just because we filmed most of it, so this making of is kind of like, well, we filmed most of it, so we just have a few sick bay scene and a few other scenes on the planet and stuff like that. It's mostly a ship show, mostly a bottle show. And so most of the DS9 one is done too. But I think we have ops to do on the Deep Space Nine one. Yeah, and so lunch now. But it's a good story, and Tuvok and Janeway, you nail it. It's nailed. You have those two characters down pat. It's just wow. This episode would have been awesome, like season 6 or so. But yeah, the arbitrator, and it was redone as a Space Vanguards or Starcrackers episode. It's redone as something else, other stories as well, and it has been known to the interwebs. It was posted for a while, and it appears that the people that did the Orville in season 1 and 2 were aware of it as well, and they did a couple episodes that were similar. So that's interesting. They weren't the same though. They didn't go that far, but it is interesting that some of the dynamics of the discussion going back and forth. Also, looking back on it, it's kind of fun that it appears that the socialist utopia that is Star Trek, because it clearly is a socialist utopia where they have defeated want and poverty and all that. Yeah. The only way that would work is if they killed them all, but that would be bad. A la Stalin and the other. No, it's that in the future of Star Trek, they don't. It isn't that they don't want money or religion or anything like that. It's more like they don't need it. Basically, the need for things, the need for idols, the need for money is no longer relevant if you have a society that's ridiculous. That really is kind of ridiculous. or they have replicators and they can just make matter at whim. No, make matter. Programmable matter is not that far off from a holodeck, so, or anything else like that. Program matter. That's how the holodeck is. Program energy and matter and force fields. But yeah, the idea that there's a the Roddenberry idea, and Mark's Cards and I discussed this yesterday. It's like we went to the toy show, and we discussed the Roddenberry thing is that, yeah, he got rid of religion and idols, but he also got rid of fanatical religion. And there would be classic episodes, several of them, where they would go to a planet where a cult was ruled by a computer or a false god or a false prophet. That would become a thing. In Next Generation, they developed that into beyond the Trelane kind of false god to the Q, who were demigods that were just advanced people under a more Clarkian idea that any race that's distinguishable, that science is so advanced, would be indistinguishable from magic. They're not really gods, they just have really advanced science, and they're able to traverse space and time. They're a Cat 3 civilization. You guys can do that at a whim, which would make different timelines each time they did it, technically. Screw up the universe. So yeah, so religion is not completely gone. People would still practice religions. They have a chapel on the Enterprise, that kind of thing. They have a Lower Decks episode with somebody with a Ajib. They have nuns, apparently. Romulans have nuns, ripping off of course, the nun army from not only Halo and Mass Effect, but Dune, because they all got it from Dune. The Bene Gesserit from Dune. Frank Herbert, yeah. The books, the Dune books that predate everything. Most sci-fi is based loosely on that. So you have, original religions, false religions. We did a whole episode, a whole season, false gods and stuff. The planet of the fallen ones. We did the Nephilim planet in the 32nd century in that weird time travel episode, and met those people there and found out that all the stuff that's going on now this season is leading up to what would amount to be the religious church's war against the Valley Religious and the Jocks and all that, and the Celians and the TMS and the Elysians and all that. That starts this season, 700 years earlier. It's going on in the background with the Dominion and everything. Also, we were wondering whether Picard's season 3 was in production at any point or airing during the writing of this. It wasn't yet on. The final story that we wrapped on this episode, the final draft, was February 6th, roughly. And so 3rd and 6th, somewhere around there, and it was Picard aired a week and a half later. So we knew nothing about what they were. We had some hints about what they were going to do from the previews. That it appeared that there was going to be something to do with the conspiracy aliens, the Bluegills. I thought they were going to do the Bluegills. Really did, because they kept showing like tendrils in the walls and creatures in the walls and stuff. The red door and all that. They showed that. And I was like, okay, what are they going to do the Bluegills? Because that'd be cool. And the Borg, a little bit of the Borg, a little bit of the Dominion. We could tell from some of the characters beaming in and out that they were Dominion, So we knew that was going to happen. We knew there was a Dominion villain. And she was pretty much the Elysian. They're called the Vatic, but she was the Elysian. She was Libby, basically. The Libyan, the Elysian. And she was going to be in the story, which was awesome. We're like, oh, cool. Libyans in it. That's awesome. So it's a Silly Trek episode. Metellus is aware of us, apparently. Maybe he read this story years ago when he was on Voyager. He might have been one of the people reading this. Yeah, do that. But yes, Melinda Snodgrass did in fact read the story. So, yeah, as well as Fearful Symmetry, the other one. So yeah, so the religion thing, just a note that was the case. Also, if you look back at the aliens in this story, it's prophetic. It's not supposed to be, but it is. The creatures on the planet. We have the True, the Breeders, and the other ones. In this one, they're called the Terra, but they were the Latori and the Dumisi originally. And the Latori were basically mocking then radical Republicans on the planet. I didn't realize that at the time, but the way they talk, yeah, they're kind of like GOP hardliners. And so Dax and her crew coming along, they're socialist Democrats. Clearly, they're liberal, very liberal, and they're like, oh no, we'll help your society because we're different from you. Turns out that the three factions on the planet are just versions of radical Republicans. They're not supposed to be. Was what I was thinking of. I was thinking of, as a centrist Reagan era '80s kid, the '70s and '80s kid. I was thinking it would be fun is to have a Cold War episode that goes hot, and kind of do that, kind of like Star Trek Six. So it has a remnant of that. But yeah, they're clearly the true that are underground are clearly the like truthers. Basically, current it was like 30 years ago, the truthers. It's a radical sort of weird ex-Tea Party, ex-Patriot group that's like, okay, we're the same species as you guys. We just really want to get you because we figure you're out to get us and stuff. And having Lelantos down there is fun in this version because it actually makes more sense. So the Commander Lelantos of the True is sort of a Trumpian figure, not intentionally, because this was written in the '90s, so it wasn't intentional. But he was around, yeah. So like the Simpsons years ago, predicting the Simpsons already did it. President Trump, we were kind of predicting it there, not intentionally. And so the truth, yeah, the anti-vaxxer truthers would be the true. Absolutely, they would be the radical sort of highfalutin, like our cult leader is awesome, so we like that. And cult leader Lelantos. In this version, he's an ex-Starfleet captain that's gone rogue. It was one of those stories, yeah. But in the original story, he wasn't an ex-Starfleet captain. He was just a crazy guy on the planet. He didn't really have that backstory. But in this one, gave him that backstory to connect it more to Star Trek and more to classic Trek by saying he's this guy. And they got to arbitrate the thing, and we have a spy working for the other side. I would say that the lady, the Kepteran lady, is more like kind of like Russians, kind of like they have like spy things on there and implants in their body, kind of like a little like Russians, but a little like KGB kind of thing. That's probably what I was thinking of. And the breeders are, of course, an American colony of some kind. Republicans again. They could be libertarians, possibly, but something similar to that. The idea of, but they're being tricked into following the cult of the other guys because they are not as educated as the upper class. So there's a class stratification. The upper class Kepterans, the Littori originally, they're upper class, and these guys are more like middle class. The guys on the other planet. So. They're very topical, actually, for their current period, actually. It's not supposed to be, but very topical. So you have that. And you have they would be like the other, Cold War, post-Cold War groups, post-Reagan era groups, post-Bush era groups, as Bush came along and then Bush 2. It was written during the Clinton administration, so yes, of course, Esri is the Clinton archetype helping the crew. It doesn't work, but the bad guys get what they want at the end, so that's interesting. The bad guys actually end up destroying their planet, basically, or messing it up really bad, because that's a better Star Trek story than the other ones. It's like oh yeah, Kirk manages to solve the story. Kind of doesn't. They end up kind of making it worse, which is interesting. So yeah, when you do the making of this episode, you don't need to go into all the other stuff because I just did. But yes, but yeah, that's what's going on. It's wasn't evident at the time, but it's evident looking back now that you have these you have three kind of radicalized groups of people behaving weirdly. They are not, however, radical religious groups. So they're not Muslim, they're not Irish Catholics, and they're not Irish Protestants from that era, although Mahoney does mention that there. Although Mahoney originally in the script was Chakotay, so if he was bringing up anything like that, he would have been bringing up something in Latin America, where there's a lot of communism in Latin America. Maybe that was what he was on about. But yeah, so a lot of dictatorships and stuff. So, yeah, so he's a different guy. So he was Chakotay, basically, in the original. So yeah. Yeah, I didn't add anything involving any of the other backstories because I thought that he doesn't need any more. It's long enough. And I can see why they said, oh, there's no. Oh, they liked it, but they said it's just a little long, is all. You can shave off 5 pages of this story, you could probably sell it. But yeah, so there, yeah. Ironically, the version that we're shooting here is going to be in the film is going to be roughly the size of the other episodes. It's actually trimmed some of it out. Trimmed about 2 minutes of it out. Turns out. Anyway, they can be a little long though because like Strange New Worlds over there at Star Trek, you can have an episode that's either a little longer or a little shorter. It can be 48 minutes or it can be over an hour. Just don't make it a whole movie unless you're going to make it a two-parter. So yeah, we can do that because it's my own stuff. It's my fan films. I can do whatever I want. Yeah, and it's not directly an archetype for the radical Republican people. It's just a story. It's a metaphor. It seems a little like it. Is all. I can see the parallels. They're just parallels. Alt-right people don't freak out. Brief making of before we go on. This is for Arbiter kept Terra in the Space Vanguards series, Starcrackers, Prospectors season. The Nemesian Latori Judgments episode. They were kangaroos and wallabies and things. They were kangaroo humanoids. In the original script, as Kal Kat and Mark's cards saw the story, they weren't humanoid republicrats and oligarchs and things on the planet. They were space bunnies. They were bunny rabbits. They were space bunny rabbits. So yeah, the characters in this story obviously are not bunny rabbits, but space humanoid bunnyoids. Not ursoids. That would be a bear, but whatever. Yeah, bunnies are, but space bunnies, which explains the name. The breeders. They were bunny rabbit people. They would, of course, bunny rabbits breed a lot. Space bunnies. Space bunnies. A plutocrat space bunnies. Probably with top hats. Would have been bizarre. Yes. How would they have filmed that? Space bunnies. Space bunnies. That's what Mark Cards wants to see, the space bunnies. See him doing it. Okay, this is a scene pickup of a captain's log from the Arbiter of Terra. The date is wrong. We don't want to have be the wrong date. So we're going to shoot that right now. Fix that. It's going to be, so this is using the second unit camera for the Arbiter of Terra. You can see the Arbiter of Terra hospital scene. Before we go on to the Mirror Universe planet. So we're going to Terra first. We forgot about that one. Yeah, so we're going to do that. And because of this camera's fine. It's only a generation. It's the model just before the other one. I just have to make sure that the color stays and that it doesn't veer to the left. Also, there's going to be a cute nod here. So to a blogger. Also gets a cameo in this. So let's film the scene. Let's do it. It's not really a cameo. It's more like a nod. It's a nod. But yes, let's shoot the scene and see how things work out for that one. This is on the planet of the Terra, which is at or near the Gamma Quadrant. On the other side of Key-Draconis and the other planet. They're related. It's a TV planet. It's an offshoot of the TV planet, Roman planet thing. It's offshoot of the Ted Turner planet from Silly Trek. That's where it is in Silly Realms. So here we go. Yeah. The sick bay scene. Frame the scene. Okay, still at the evening here at 7. This is the Arbiter of Key-Draconis scenes. There are only a few. So I think we can knock at least one out. There it goes. Yeah. Oh shit. So, note that the scene on page 18 no longer has Kestra in it, because why would they send her down to the planet? It is Mike and Rich and Jay and these guys. It's these guys. And they have like one line each, pretty much. And, yeah, not Kestra. So, Kestra is now Dad. Alright, so we have, not going to do that. Okay, yeah, let's not make Mike and Rich, because there were Kes and, Rich was Neelix, and then Kes. Yeah. We're not doing this scene. So the corridor scene. Note the we already filmed the Lelanto scene. Mahoney and the others, the Lelanto scene, and that's fine. There's nothing left of that. They were presuming the other three beamed up while these guys were in the office. It's not important that they. I suppose, though. Well, I don't know. Is it really? I mean, kind of is. Because you had them in the other scene, but if it was just they were just checking the planet, maybe I do need to reshoot that. Well, it's like I don't know, it's like there are scenes where there's slice of life again, and the meeting is the important part. So, the Lantos. So there's a series of scenes adieu here, a series of scenes aside from the main scenes aside from the same action. And I want to reshoot Lelantos meeting the guys. This is a slightly different Lelantos, but it doesn't matter. He is the same Picard figure, and yeah, I want to do that over just because that was a little. It looked weird. So yeah, it looked weird. Now there might be another Lelantos later, and it's kind of the same guy, so it's fine. Yeah, that was better. That's I redid that scene, followed by a piece of the pastry scene, followed by them beaming up, and then the turbolift scene. So when you edit the scene together, this version is better than the other version. It's more like, okay, the bookends the office scene. Now, also, I know the other Lelantos scene is the one that mentions who Lelantos is, but that can still stay there, because that scene's fine. But this one is redone here, because it's, yeah. In the next scene, he's hiding somewhere, so it'd be more Lando, he's hiding somewhere. Yeah. Here he's not hiding, he's in his office. So it's fine. It works way better. The Lelantos scene, middle of the story, page 22 or 3? Yeah. 23, yeah. Anyway, so. Wednesday here. It is Wednesday. The, yes, that was the end of the Arbiter of Terra. Yes, and it connects to the other story because there's a changeling there. There's a changeling on the planet. They killed him, though. He's dead. And then they nonchalantly, like, he just nonplussed goes back to his job. It's funny. Because he's a bureaucrat. The other guy, the lady's a bureaucrat, too. And she's sort of a Cinders. She's sort of the Grand Orient to Terra lady. That's what that's supposed to be. And there's a version of her in the Mirror Universe, but I don't think there's another version of her elsewhere. I think it's the Mirror Universe on the other planet. But there's always a version out there because Silly in Space regenerates people. And yeah, that's a clone of Lelantos. It was a changeling. So that in the story it wasn't that originally, but here in Silly Trek, put that on the end because then it works better. Makes it say like, oh, okay, he really wasn't the rogue Captain Lelantos. He was a changeling disguised it, and we'd have no idea what happened to the other guy. Also, the one that was on the screen looked a little different. So, no, that's why. Yeah. So, sure, it works. Yeah, I really not much else to say about this episode. It works. I don't think it. As I said in the other making of, I don't really think that it's a right-wing, left-wing thing at all. I think it's more like a bureaucracy planet that's gone haywire and just does stuff like that. And they're just... It's very simplistic. It's obviously almost hippie-like. The Roddenberry wouldn't like hippie, but yeah, the way negotiations actually work in the '90s didn't work like that. And now they really don't work like that. Like if people actually just decided to talk things out, like in a counseling session, yeah, war would end in overnight. But nobody does that. Um, they have ideals and beliefs, and they believe their propaganda of each other and whatnot, and it just it leads to all kinds of drama that they just wouldn't solve. If they actually thought logically about something and solve, war and strife. The thing that Star Trek, a very Star Trek episode, the thing that Star Trek looks at. We're implying that in this planet is only a century before the current Federation in the story. So really, they're on level of the Federation during Kirk's time on the planet, which is interesting. Yeah, so they have warp drive and all that. They've had it for years. But yeah, so that's interesting. Yeah, and actually, there are two factions of right wingers on the planet. If you really want to go there, think about that. There two right wing factions. Also, I thought it was fun to add to the story that the aliens, the True, that looks like Geordie LaForge because it's a LaForge figure. They've analyzed his. They analyzed him, right? And they're like, you guys you're actually from another planet entirely. So that kind of goes with the Tuvok story earlier, where he's saying it's a colony of something. The planet is actually a colony. Terra is a colony of Far Out, this other planet. So that's kind of a cool twist. Is they're and Little Forge is from Far Out allegedly. So yeah, the captain at last minute tells him, look, you're actually descended from this other group of humanoids called on Far Out, the Penasarians. And if you go back there, you can meet them someday. So, yeah. And then they reference LaForge. They say LaForge is a great chief engineer. It's just like, yeah, wow. So they're Starfleet, technically a colony of humans, humanoids, and they had a changeling. They have different hearts, though. They said they had two hearts, the one person. So Far Outians have two hearts. Also, Far Outians have to wear visors because you see, at least in the Chaos stories, Geordi was unique because they all said he was blind at birth. But what it is in this version is they had to wear visors because their sun is a little brighter than Sol, and so they have to wear sunglasses or visors or things to protect their eyes on the planet. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, that's it.